Sometimes the harder you study, the worse you score, and I can prove it. Have you ever noticed that some of your classmates study less and still score higher? Or have you known something cold and still gotten it wrong on a test? That's not a coincidence. In fact, that's the problem. Now, if you don't know me, I'm Alec Palmerton. I spent most of my life convinced I was a bad test taker. The fact is, I wasn't. I just had all these wrong ideas about studying that felt right, but were actually the problem. Once I saw that, I scored in the top 0.1% on one of the hardest exams in the world. Now, I coach students and doctors through the highest stakes exams of their careers. The ones where if they don't get the score they need, their career can literally be over. And after coaching thousands of them, I can tell you, the ones who work the hardest are almost always the ones most stuck. By the end of this, you'll know why and how to fix it. Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When you get a practice test score back, what's the first thing you feel? Not the first thing you think, what's the first thing that you feel? If your score is low, you don't just think, I need to study more. If you're like most people, you're gonna feel it. Maybe even something is wrong with you. And when we see someone else post a high score, we don't just think, oh, good for them. Instead, we feel that comparison in our chest. In medicine, there's match day. Everyone's posting the results of where it is that they're gonna go to residency. Yes, we are happy for our friends, and at the same time, we're also measuring ourselves against every single one of them. At core is one of the biggest beliefs that I had to address, which is that my score and my results are reflections of me. And here's the thing, we come by this honestly. Nobody really designed it this way. But think about how the whole process works. To get into medical school, so much of it comes down to numbers. Our MCAT, our GPA. There's a direct correlation between your MCAT and your grades and which schools will even take a look at your application. I know there's a real push towards holistic admissions, looking at the entire person, but to be honest, it's hard to ignore the numbers. Then we get to the next level. In medicine, it's residency. Programs have cutoff scores, where literally if your number is not high enough, they might not even read the rest of your application. In fairness to them, they're not trying to be cruel. They have thousands of applications and they're highly paid physicians in their field, and they need some way to filter out the applications that they're going to read more carefully. But what that means for us is that our number comes first in many cases. So over years of this, it almost feels inevitable, right? That you start to feel like you are the number. We come by this honestly, like it's not irrational, it's just not particularly helpful. So I remember when I was a medical student at Stanford and my advisor had been telling everyone, oh yeah, you should get a 250, which at the time was a really high score for step 1. And he told me, you're the kind of person that can get a 260. And I remember thinking first, wow, that's a big compliment. And then second, it was just like so much pressure. And I just started to affect the way that I was sleeping. It started to affect like everything. And it was hard for me to really enjoy sort of learning and being in class. And I eventually realized like, oh, I'm associating my score with who it is that I am as a person. Like I'm the kind of person who can get a 260. Like I think that phrase really stuck with me. I needed to get past that. Because here's what this belief is actually doing. Every practice test then feels really personal. Like for me, a bad score didn't just feel like I needed to study more. It felt like proof of something that I was always afraid of. And so oftentimes, right, what we do is then we'll avoid the practice tests entirely, or we'll try to, do fewer of them. Like I see this a lot where people will study and then they just won't take a practice test because they're afraid of what it might mean. Or a bad score can wreck your entire week. Either way, what it's doing is it's preventing us from learning from those practice tests because we're too busy feeling terrible about ourselves. In addition, the other problem that this belief of, I am my score is that it's very difficult to learn from the people around us. And the reason for this is because every conversation turns into like, am I better? Am I worse? Or I'm like silently comparing myself to them. Instead of thinking, what are they doing differently, right? I'm thinking like, how are they scoring? And sort of conflating that with almost like my self-worth. The other thing to notice is that this belief is just wrong. Like it's not true that, you are your score, and I'll give you some proof. So we had 2 students recently who they were both starting in the 230s, which for step 2 it's like a little bit above passing. It's maybe 1 standard deviation above passing. So not a great score. And in a week or 2, after just changing the way that they were reading questions, they both improved by over 30 points. One of them ended up with a 265. One of them just sent me their practice test score. She got a 273 on our last practice test. These are the people that had the same brain. It was the same intelligence. The only thing that they changed was approach. I think the more that I started coaching students and I started to see that when you change their skills, right? Because ultimately this is a skill problem, right? It's not that like we are the score. It's just that our score is a representation of our skills, and our skills can be changed. And if you want to learn how to engineer your conditions so that you can get higher scores in less time, and especially if you're studying for the USMLEs, COMLEX, or any specialty exams for, board certification, be sure to check the link where you can sign up for a 14-step free program. In addition, if you want to book a free call with our team to figure out how it is that we might help, be sure to check in the description. The more that I started to see okay, when you actually coach people around these skills, their scores can improve. And when their scores improve, then that does impact their belief. Their score isn't them, right? Again, their score is just a reflection of their approach. So that's the first belief that I had to challenge, that our score reflects our skills, not who it is that we are. But because so many of us carry this belief for so long, it creates a second sort of false belief. And honestly, this next one might be the most important thing that we talk about today, because it's the one that's costing you points right now on literally every single test that you're taking. It affects how you study, how you take tests, and why things that should feel good actually feel wrong. The second belief I had to challenge myself to score substantially higher is the idea that if it's easy, it's not working. Here's something that might sound familiar. You sit down to study, you make your flashcards, and it feels maybe a little too easy. Something in your brain says, this can't be right. So you make your flashcards harder. More details, more complexity. Now your reviews take forever. You dread doing them and your scores aren't improving. But this doesn't just show up in how you study, it shows up on the actual test itself. Have you ever been taking a practice exam and you read a question and the answer just seemed really obvious? But then instead of picking it and moving on, you thought, wait, this can't be this easy, right? They must be trying to trick me. So you second guessed yourself, you changed your answer, and the obvious answer was actually the right one. That's literally the same belief. It's if there's something that's easy, something must be wrong. Now, does any of this sound familiar? I was working with a student who had this exact problem. She was going out of her way to make every card as difficult as possible. When I asked why, she said, if it feels too easy, I know it's not good enough. She couldn't exactly explain where it came from. She just said, I've always been that way. But here's the crazy part. And again, tell me if you can relate to this. When she was exhausted at night and she was going through questions and she didn't have sort of the mental bandwidth to overthink it, her scores actually went up. On the flip side, when it was in the morning and she was fresh and at her overthinking best, she scored worse. In other words, more effort was literally producing worse results. Now, if you can relate to this, the belief underneath it is that if it's hard, it must be working. And this is something that I really struggled with for a long time. The flip side to that is if it's easy, it must not be working. And I really think that this is connected to the belief that we just talked about, that the score is us, right? Because if it's easy studying, then it feels like that we're not earning it. Right? It's almost as if we have to suffer in order to deserve it. So we unconsciously make everything harder. Our flashcards, our study sessions, even how it is that we read questions, because easy doesn't feel like it counts. Now, I've talked with a lot of students and I've thought about my own background, and I really think that for me at least, it probably came in high school or maybe even a little bit earlier. I was the kid that I felt like I had to outwork everyone, and I had compensated by just grinding harder. And frankly, it worked. That was in many ways how it is that I got this far, especially classes like biology, where there was just a lot of details that I had to know, or English, where I had to sort of memorize passages of material, or vocab tests. Those sorts of tests reinforced it because the game became almost something like if I memorized more, if I worked harder, then I would succeed at those things. At the time, the belief may have served me, but eventually I realized that it wasn't serving me now, especially in things like medicine or undergraduate science classes where there's just so much more volume. It pays to not overcomplicate things. And for me, when I stopped overcomplicating things, studying actually became a lot more enjoyable. And that's when my scores really started to move positively. So if you're like me, you may be overcomplicating how it is that you study. But this belief also affects what you're actually putting into your brain, and that might be even more damaging. The third belief that I had to challenge was the more details that I knew, the more prepared I was. Now think back to some questions that you got wrong. When you get a question wrong on a practice test, what's your first instinct? Most people think, I didn't know enough. They think I need to learn more, or even more specifically, I need to memorize more details. So what do? You go deeper. We make more flashcards. We have more facts, more coverage. But what if that instinct of I need to know more is actually the thing that's holding you back? Let me tell you about two different tests that I took when I was at Stanford. The first test was the Stanford anatomy tests. These were notoriously difficult. For part of the test, they would literally just give us 5 statements, not which of them was correct. We had to figure out of the 5 statements, which of them was false. In other words, 4 of the statements were true and 1 of them was false. And you literally had to know all of the statements, whether they were true or not, which meant that you literally had to know all 5 statements in order to know like if it was true. And frankly, that was the game, right? If you wanted to do well on this test, you just had to know a ridiculous number of details. And I played it because frankly, I wanted to be an anatomy TA, which eventually I did. That was sort of the game that we were all playing. Now, fast forward to board study. I started with the same effort and the same approach. I just tried to memorize more and more details. I was grinding more, and then my scores were not great. And frankly, I couldn't figure out why. I was doing more work. I was doing more of what it is that I had been doing on my tests previously, and it wasn't leading to better scores, whereas previously it had been leading to better scores. For some of you, this may sound familiar, and let me explain why. The difference was that the anatomy test was testing recall. Did I know the fact? Did I know if this was true or false or not? The difference is that my board exams were testing whether I could actually take a concept and apply it in a situation that I'd never seen before. It was a completely different game, and the issue is that I was playing by the rules of the previous test and thinking that it would help me with a completely different exam. It took me an embarrassingly long time to figure this out, and I point this out because I see this in almost every single student that I work with. They're playing the wrong game because the old game is the only one that they've known, or at least it's the main one that they've known in the past. So let me make this clear. Oftentimes in our undergrad or high school, the tests that we've been tested using are more tests of recall or knowledge. If our score is not very high, it's literally because we don't know enough stuff. And so the solution to that problem is literally to memorize more, right? Because if I memorize more, if I learn more, I can get a higher score. The issue is that some of the biggest tests that you end up taking in your life, the SATs to some extent, the MCAT for sure, the USMLE Step 1 and Step 2 and Step 3, the ABIM, most specialty board exams, they're testing your ability to learn and apply concepts. So when you're studying, you have to know what exam you're studying for. If it's a test of principles, then make sure that you learn the principles and learn how to apply them, right? If it's a test of recall, which actually, to be honest, my anesthesia board exams was just tests of knowledge and recall. Like I just applied those rules to that. Whereas, for the USMLEs, I had to play by different rules. Like it's almost like the MCAT or, almost like a physics test where you learn the principle and then you got to apply it. Think of the multiple students that we've had that have gained 30 or more points in weeks. I can guarantee that they didn't improve their score that quickly just by improving their knowledge, right? It's impossible to improve by nearly 3 standard deviations in a couple weeks with the knowledge, right? Because this is like years worth of knowledge that they are having to learn. Instead, what changed was they took the same knowledge that they had and they just learned how to apply it in a different way. In other words, getting back to that same idea that it is a skill that you have to learn. So how can you use this? First, ask yourself what test you are studying for. And second, if it's a test of application, the question isn't, do I know enough? The question is, can I take what it is that I know and use it in a situation that I've never seen before? That's the game that you have to play for the MCAT, the USMLEs, ABIM, right? Like a lot of specialty boards. And once you see that, you will stop drowning in details and start building the kind of knowledge that works on test day. And that's exactly what happened to me, is I stopped memorizing a bunch of random details and I started to lean into learning principles and leaned into seeing, could I apply these principles in my flashcards, and then taking that same skill set and using it on testing. Now, even if you get all 3 of these beliefs right, there's one more that will stop you from ever actually doing anything about it. And this is one of the sneakiest because it disguises itself as being responsible. And the final belief I needed to challenge was that I need perfect conditions to succeed. Have you ever thought, I'll study when I have a full 2 hours? And then when you don't have 2 hours, you just don't study. There are times in my life where I was planning on starting studying at 8 in the morning and it's 8:10 and I'm like, oh God, all this stuff that I've already planned, it's not gonna work. Oh, my whole study session's ruined. Or if I miss one day, it can spiral and it becomes like 3 days or a week. And then I say something like, oh, I'll just restart on Monday. I kept telling myself that I need the right conditions, right? The right amount of time, the right headspace. And since those conditions almost never existed, I was basically not studying. I'm gonna tell you something next that surprises most people. So I have pretty bad ADHD, and you may or may not know this, but I'm not a very disciplined person, although on the surface, a lot of people have thought that I am. I've taken multiple personality tests and discipline is like not my thing. Like I think there was a test that I took where it said that tenacity, right? Like the ability to just like push through and just do a bunch of stuff was one of my weakest traits. Now, this is surprising for a lot of people because they see how much work that I do and they think that I must have this incredible willpower. The honest answer is that I don't. What I do have is environment engineering. So I know that I am weak. I know that I have ADHD. I know I know that I have an addictive personality. I know that I'm addicted to my phone. And because I have this poor impulse control with digital distractions, I've just accepted that. So instead of trying to fight that or blaming myself or thinking like, oh, I need to have like better self-control, I will literally just build an environment that makes the right behavior automatic, or at least makes it extremely difficult, if not impossible, to do these things that would otherwise distract me. So, for example, during residency, I did not own a smartphone. During medical school, during college, I did not have a smartphone. Instead, I had a dumb phone and I had an iPod Touch that just had the things that I needed on it. So like, for example, in medical school and in residency, I just had something that would allow me to to do flashcards and not a whole lot else. And the reason is because I knew that if I had my email, I knew that if I had Instagram, I knew that if I had all of these other things, I would literally just never study. In addition, so like when I was in residency, I engineered my environment to force myself to study even more by living as far away as possible from the hospital in the farthest subway stop on the subway. Like I was literally at the first stop on the line, because the longer the commute throughout 4 years of residency, I knew that I would study more because A, I had a lot of time on the T, and B, I literally did not have the ability to do anything else other than study on my iPod Touch on the train. So it worked out because my wife and I had a bigger apartment for less money. It was, pretty far away. And I told her, hey, like, let's do this because it will literally force me to study every single day. So it's like we can save money and I'll get more done. Now I do have a phone, which is why I have a smartphone addiction. And so I will brick my phone every single night. Like I use an app that blocks all of the distracting apps like my email and like news and shopping and things like that. It will literally block it at 8:30 every single night because I know that it's a lot easier to do something 100% of the time or never than it is sometimes. So if I sometimes let myself watch Netflix, say at 8:30, I always will, or at least I will do it a lot more. But if I block it, it's just not even a choice. Like I literally cannot do it. My decision is just taken away from me, which at night is super important because I have, again, poor impulse control. So my belief that I needed willpower was wrong, right? And I didn't need discipline. Instead, I just needed the right conditions. So my belief that I needed willpower, that I needed discipline, that I needed the right conditions, that was all backwards. What I found is that discipline is what I needed if my environment was fighting me. But if I set up my environment in the right way, I really didn't need discipline at all. So if you worry that you're lazy, the problem is that you're relying on motivation in an environment that's designed to distract you. There's a doctor that we've been working with recently. She's literally a fellow, like a cardiology fellow in Boston, ironically. And she told me she had no time to study before she was working with us. And then we told her, okay, great. So just go to bed early and then wake up early and make sure that you block distracting apps and then work in the hours that you have before you go into work as opposed to after you get home. She realized just having 40 minutes in the beginning of the day was helping her because she was actually focused and had energy, and she was, blocking distractions, helped her get tons more done than she was in like 2 or 3 hours when she was trying to do it after work. So especially if you're working full time and you're really struggling to get stuff done at the end of the day, just make sure that you are doing this at the time that it makes most sense. Another thing that I've done is that I will do my flashcard reviews all the time, right? Like it's a lot easier to do something always or never. And so I will literally do my flashcards even on things like my wedding day, every day of my honeymoon, not because I'm disciplined or because I've got really good motivation, but literally because I just set it as my minimum expectation that I am going to do this, regardless of the circumstances, right? I'm not waiting for perfect circumstances. It's like on my wedding day, there was like all these pictures and, everything, if you've ever gotten married, like there's just a lot of stuff that you got to do. And I still found some like random time in between, getting pictures and getting, my hair and all this stuff done. Like I just did my cards just to make sure that I got my cards done. And I also, did them in advance, did some in advance so that I had fewer to do on the day of my wedding. It's like brushing your teeth, right? It's like, I didn't decide that day, like, oh, I don't know, am I going to brush my teeth? Like I just did it just because that's what it is that I do. And so just make that commitment. The way that I brainwash myself is, is to stop waiting for perfect conditions because they don't exist, especially in clinical training when your life will never be a clean, like, oh, you get 2 hours of study. The question isn't, will I have the right conditions? It's how do I set up my life so I study no matter what the conditions are? So look, I wasn't a genius at Stanford. I just figured out which beliefs were holding me back and got rid of them. And that's something that anyone can do. If you want to see the actual system, the specific strategies I use to go from bad test taker to the top 0.1%, and the same ones my students use to make those massive score jumps, that's exactly what it is that I talk about in this next video, how I went from bad test taker to top 0.1% at Stanford Med.